You're listening to The Stories Your City Forgot, a show about the forgotten, the overlooked, and the deeply human pieces of our history. I'm Justin Mattson, and today we're digging into the bizarre and heartbreaking saga of a man literally banished from his home county. This is a story about race, justice, and what happens when a man just can't seem to catch a break. With that in mind, let's let our guest introduce himself.
Awesome. Hey, I am professor of history at the College of Southern Idaho.
And what is
Justin Vipperman.
There you go. That's your name. You've got a really interesting story that you claim to have told me about that I don't remember. The exile of a man named LeRoy Wilkins.
Yeah, this story is such a great one. It's a sad story, but it's so fascinating to me that somebody is exiled from Twin Falls County, and it's a story that we don't know. I came across this story and started researching, and it goes back farther than LeRoy Wilkins, and so I think in order to get started, we would have to start with his mother, Mrs. Cornelia White. She moved to Rogerson, Idaho, just south of Twin Falls, and kept pigs. And so that's how she made her money. They would run their pigs into Twin Falls and sell them. Unfortunately, in the 1940 rather, she had been told multiple times that her hogs could not roam the neighborhood. And somehow they must have been getting out and roaming the neighborhood and getting into the neighbor's property. And the neighbors were pretty upset. And they have complained multiple times. But March is the first actual complaint that we see in the newspaper. Well, by May, they've gotten out again, and she is taken to jail. Cornelia White is taken to jail for her hogs being out because the police had told her this. Now, Mrs. Cornelia White is a black woman, and there's some talk about maybe this was racism, that these hogs getting out and getting into other people's yards. And whether that's true or not, I can't speak to. But what I do know is that all of the evidence points to that her hogs, she is fined for her hogs getting out. She cannot pay the fine because she's very poor. And so she is jailed for the fine. And I think that the fine is $19. I think that's what $19 in 1940. She can't pay it. That's what it comes to, because in the beginning it's like $1.90, but it just, with her legal fees and everything, it's $19.50. And
that's rough.
Yeah.
Inflation is that would be a $10,000 fine today.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. So she can't pay it while she's in jail. So she's jailed in May of 1940. In June of 1940, her house mysteriously burns to the ground. This is unfortunate for a myriad of reasons, but the biggest one being that it seems like that the community of Rogerson did not want her there. Okay, so her house burns in June, and then she's on June 26th, and on June 29th she is released from jail, has nowhere to go to. Okay, well, she winds up going to her and her son live near each other. And so she goes to her son's house. Okay, that gets us to LeRoy Wilkins. That's her son. Her son is LeRoy Wilkins, black male who is also selling hogs with his mother, does some other odd jobs around town out of Rogerson. One night, he heads into Twin to sell hogs during the day, and that night he comes back. He does say that he stopped to get a drink at a local bar, tavern, and heads home. He comes back roughly around 1 a.m. And so he's driving back in and comes upon a woman whose name is Marjorie Diffendorfer. She is a white woman who has had some run-ins with LeRoy Wilkins in the past. And so when LeRoy Wilkins comes upon her out in the middle of nowhere, Rogerson, he is very cautious about how to move forward with her because she has caused problems in his life in the past. Anyway, she tells this story that at 1 o'clock in the morning, she's awakened by fire. There's a fire going on in her house. She jumps out of a window and runs towards the road. Her husband and brother-in-law jump out another window to save the automobile. Okay. However, she believes that her husband and brother-in-law have died in the fire. And so when she sees car lights coming down the road, she stops the person. It's LeRoy Wilkins. He's very cautious and tells her no, that he won't take her. He won't help her. And she pleads with him, like, please, will you please do this? And he says, look, if you'll sign this piece of paper. And he pulls out a piece of paper and has her write that she is going with him on her own free will and accord. Like, she's going with them. And so LeRoy Wilkins takes her to his house. Okay. The next morning, the husband and brother-in-law show up at the house with a police officer, which I always find funny. Like, they just assumed that she was at LeRoy Wilkins' house. Like, that's interesting.
What's really interesting here is that he's like, all right, I've got a pen and paper. I need you to write down that you are coming with me free and that I am not kidnapping you. The not kidnapping paper.
Yes, yeah. LeRoy Wilkins will say that he sees Mrs. Diffendorfer sitting on a hill in a bloody dress, and he feels like he needs to help her, but he is so afraid that she will claim something nefarious, that he does this. And in fact, in the newspaper, there's a newspaper clipping from 1940 that says the note almost illegible, because of hasty writing, said the woman ran from the house to escape the fire, met Wilkins returning from Twin Falls by way of an old road, and paid him in trade for 2 turkeys she had previously purchased from him. Anyway, so she writes this note being like, yep, I'm doing this thing. I'm going to go. I'm going with you, and nothing will happen. However, when her husband and brother-in-law show up the next day, she claims rape, and LeRoy Wilkins is immediately taken into custody. So
there's a lot of things that I have questions about here. Why did the brother and son?
Husband and brother-in-law. Yeah.
Why did they immediately assume LeRoy Wilkins? What's going on there? And why did they show up with the cops specifically?
2 months earlier, LeRoy Wilkins had been arrested on rape charges of this woman, and there was no evidence, and nobody could, because there was no evidence and there was no witnesses. LeRoy Wilkins is not jailed at that time. Okay, he's picked up, but he spends like several hours in jail. But that's why LeRoy Wilkins was so nervous about getting involved with her in the first place. But this also shows why the husband and brother-in-law show up the next day with the police, and why they went straight to his house, right?
Yeah, that does make a little bit more sense if you've had a run-in with somebody in the past. Also makes sense why he pulled out this is not a kidnapping form.
Yep. Exactly.
I'm glad that he had that ready to go for his safety.
Yeah, I agree.
So what happens next?
Yeah, so his trial is set. He can't find an attorney to take his case, and so he's going to have to go with the public defender. And so his mother, Cornelia White, writes to the NAACP, and D.H. Oliver, who is a black attorney from Salt Lake, is appointed by the NAACP to come and be his attorney. Okay, so he comes up to defend him. The prosecuting attorney is Everett Sweely, he's a prominent figure.
Also a football player, right?
Also a football player. Yeah,
he's a football player.
Football player at the University of Michigan. Yeah, he winds up out here, but he's the guy that helped Joseph Mitchum pass the bar, actually. So I don't know that Everett Sweely. Some people have said that Everett Sweely was racist. I don't know that the story is going to tell you that or not, but I think that there's this the claim could be made that they're just complex people. But basically, he's the prosecuting attorney. He tries to terminate this appointment by the NAACP, says that, nope, you have to use the court-appointed public defender, to which Judge J.W. Porter overrules Sweely. And he says, look, Wilkins can have as many attorneys as he wants. So Wilkins ends up with attorney George M. Paulson as the public defender, and then D.H. Oliver as his NAACP appointed attorney.
Now, why did he try to get this NAACP attorney, why did he try to get him removed from this case? Is it because he was based out of Salt Lake? What do you think the reasoning here is?
Yeah, what it seems like in the articles where it talks about that Sweely is so upset about this is that, first, he doesn't believe that this is a race issue. He doesn't believe the NAACP should have anything to do with this in Idaho. But then also he's kind of frustrated with there being double counsel, and he doesn't want Wilkins to have double counsel. He believes that that's not fair to the prosecuting case.
It's not fair to the prosecution. That's a bummer.
That is a bummer.
We hate to see the prosecutors get treated unfairly. Unfairly. And so, what's going on in this trial? We get to the trial. How does the trial go down?
Yeah. So look, I love this. There's this a huge part of the beginning of this trial is finding a jury, and they find a bunch of farmers from Twin Falls County to be on this jury, which, look, that's not abnormal for the time. Your jury is going to be a bunch of farmers if you do anything in southern Idaho at the time, but it makes up a bunch of farmers. Okay, and Sweely believes that he is prosecuting for these farmers who are already frustrated with Cornelia White's hogs being out. They're frustrated with LeRoy Wilkins, who this is the second time he's been charged, or well, first time charged, but second time that rape has come into it. And so he believes that he is speaking for all of these farmers who are now going to be on the jury as well. And that's going to come in a minute when we get down here. But basically, the testimony becomes a big fight, and they go back and forth. You get 3 days of testimony for the prosecution. You get 2 days of testimony by the defense. It comes down to two pieces of evidence. Number one, they continue to say the dome light in LeRoy Wilkins' vehicle was out. It didn't work, and therefore Marjorie Diffendorfer could not have signed the alibi note. Or the note. They call it an alibi note, but that piece of paper. She couldn't have signed it because it was too dark that night.
The not kidnapping form couldn't have been signed because it was too dark.
Because it was too dark. And the other thing is this note. So the defense says, no, the light does work. Let's take the jury to the impound lot and we'll show you the car. So they take a recess and they head everybody out to the impound lot and they show them that the dome light works. And now there's a discussion on, was the dome light fixed between the time that LeRoy Wilkins picked up Marjorie Diffendorfer and now. And when they come back in, when they get all seated back in, the alibi note is missing. And they never find the alibi note, and therefore it is not read into evidence.
They lose a piece of vital evidence?
Yes.
How do they... What do you think happened to it?
I don't know what happened to it, but I do feel like that it's such an interesting story. They push them all out to the impound lot, and the note comes up missing. Like, that's wild to me.
That is crazy. I wonder, is there anybody who would have had motive to take that note, do you think? Everett Sweely.
Yeah, I mean Sweely potentially, but I don't know. I don't know that it would have been him. Obviously the defense wants that note read into evidence, and because they take a recess, which is their own fault.
Yeah.
It was them who did it, that wanted to take everybody out. They go out there, and now they lose the note, and now they're, I don't know. It probably wound up in the trash. Some cleaning lady just threw it in the trash. I don't
Right,
know.
right, yeah, they take a recess and maybe like a cleaning person came into the courtroom and was like, "Oh, they must be done.
Yeah.
I guess I'll pick up a little." This
I love
big mistake there.
Big mistake. I love the headline in the newspaper on the day after of this the this kind of like outing. It's not the headline reads "Battle over Light," and I think that that's fascinating. It says both sides rested shortly before noon after each had called rebuttal witnesses, and after the rebuttal developed into a contest over the dome light in the auto owned by Wilkins. Like that is wild. That it's like, could she have written this note in the dark?
Yeah,
Anyway,
that
so
is
I love.
that's weird. It's bizarre because
Yeah,
there are so many things about court trials that are bizarre. It's like the dome light. They couldn't have written it because they clearly couldn't have seen. And
yeah,
so, what comes next in this
yeah.
trial? They lose the alibi note.
Yep. They lose the alibi note, and they it goes. Let's see. What does it go? 45 minutes. I think it's 45 minutes is all it takes for the jury to come back and say that he's guilty. Okay, they go out, they come back. The headline in the newspaper says "Fate of Negro in Jury's Hands." It takes 45 minutes. They come back and they immediately say that he's guilty, and he is sentenced to prison. Uh, for 14 years. Yeah, he's sentenced to 14 years in the state penitentiary, the Idaho State Penitentiary, for rape. But he's not. Somewhere within the trial, it comes up that he actually started the fire at the Diffendorfer home. He's not charged with arson. There is no evidence of that. In fact, he has an alibi being in Twin at the bar, and so that's why the fire couldn't have been him. And so he is convicted on rape, and he is to serve 14 years in the state penitentiary. He is sentenced on September of 1940, and he is to enter the penitentiary in October of 1940. And so he actually presents himself at the penitentiary October 4th of 1940.
Oh, so he does it. He goes in there early.
Yeah. Yeah, so he gets in there, and immediately his mother, Cornelia White, starts sending letters to the governor. She's trying to figure out a way to get him back. One of the reasons that she would like him to like for him to be out is because he is her only means of making money, and she is like, I need him. And so she continues to write. She writes 4 or 5 letters stating that she is poverty stricken and needs help and needs LeRoy out, and could she do this? And so in January of 1941, the governor pardons him. Governor Clark pardons LeRoy Wilkins, and so Attorney Sweely is mad, and the headline in the newspaper says Idaho pardon draws uproar. This quote from Attorney Sweely, from Everett Sweely, is one of my favorites. He says, quote, "Outrage. This is an outrage to the community and the state. This amazing action by the board is an insult to the court and the jury," end quote. And he is fairly frustrated that they put this guy away. He only serves 3 months in prison before he is pardoned by Governor Clark, Chase Clark. So he gets his conditional pardon, and in his pardon, because Everett Sweely is so upset, and he's writing back and forth, and the jury is so upset. These farmers who do not want LeRoy Wilkins back in Twin Falls, they make a deal, and in the pardon, the conditional pardon paperwork, which I can send you, it says that He served, basically, he shall be returned forthwith to the Idaho State Penitentiary to serve his original sentence, period. If he does anything, he'll be back, okay? But at this point, he is done. And then typed on that document, it says, and it is further ordered that the said LeRoy Wilkins shall not enter the county of Twin Falls. And then it's signed by Chase Clark. This is interesting because they add this piece to the end of the form document. Like, they've typed it in there, and say, look, he cannot come back to Twin Falls County. So LeRoy Wilkins comes back to Twin Falls, packs up his mother, and they move to Boise in October of 1941. He's living in Boise. He actually, well, I'll stop there and let you ask any questions you might have.
Yeah, is exile a common condition on a pardon?
I don't think so. I think that this one, I mean, I haven't seen it other times, and that's why I think that it's interesting. It's interesting Idaho history. It's fun Magic Valley history of, like, what, this guy got exiled from Twin Falls because the jury was upset with him still.
It is weird that I think exile and banishment are some of the funniest possible outcomes for committing a crime. It's just, we don't want to see you around here anymore. Get out, dude. We do not want you here. Which is crazy to me that you could commit, a couple of crimes and they just go, all right, buddy, you've done enough now.
You've done enough. Yeah, you gotta leave. I do think that this is where race probably comes into play. I mean, it's the rape, but I mean, 45 minutes. You're talking about, it took 45 minutes for them to come back. There's not a lot of discussion in 45 minutes on if the guy's guilty.
They went into the back room and just went, all right, well, we could probably get some snacks or something out of this, so we can hang out for a minute.
And then they come back, and now he's pardoned 3 months later, and he's exiled from Twin Falls County. So that, to me, is fascinating. In October of 1941, and that's how we know that they're living in Boise in 1941, is that LeRoy Wilkins marries Liddell Reed in Boise. And they live with LeRoy's mother, Cornelia White. Okay, so this is October of 41. In December of 1943... this is right during World War II. You have a USO show that comes through Mountain Home to Boise. And in that is the famous boxer Joe Louis. And so Joe Louis comes to Boise, and they're at this USO show. And LeRoy Wilkins and Liddell go to this USO show to see Joe Louis. Well, Liddell ends up dancing with Joe Louis. Okay. And every time, like all the time, apparently, after this, she would tell when LeRoy wasn't doing something she liked, she would say something like, well, you're no Joe Louis. And he got so frustrated that in 1944, he files for divorce. And he says, Wilkins says in his cross complaint that after the dance, his wife frequently compared him to Joe and enumerated her husband's faults in contrast. So there is a divorce proceeding that names Joe Louis as the reason for a divorce in Idaho, which is a kind of a fun end to this whole story. I just usually like the Joe Louis story because it's kind of like, oh, LeRoy Wilkins, he can't catch a break.
Yeah, it is the story of a man having an abnormally bad string of L's.
Yep, exactly.
Just a string of them in a row. I think that this is really fascinating because we're talking, when we think of exile and banishment, I almost always go to like medieval times, right? Where it's like, look, you can be around here. You cannot be in this town. I need you to leave. It's weird to think that there were cars.
Yes.
Like that's kind of a interesting contrast. Like, he drives back down to Twin, packs up his mother, and then drives somewhere else knowing he cannot go back into Twin Falls County. Yep. And so what is he doing in Boise other than living? Does he pick his life back up as a hog farmer, or what is he?
No, he works at a factory there. His mother never goes back to work. She kind of needed him, which makes sense. But they both are buried in the cemetery above Catherine Albertson Park there in Boise.
So they actually, I guess they is loose, but LeRoy ends up divorcing his wife, and he lives out the remainder of his days. Does he ever get married? Does he ever get a win?
No, it doesn't seem that way. It seems like that he's always on the losing end of all of this, which is pretty sad. And I think that's where, like, look, we know people like this for sure, even today.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's where you have to ask yourself, like, is this because he's black? And that's where I frequently run into, like, he can't get a better job. This thing with Joe Louis, he's not. I mean, Joe Louis was a black boxer. Liddell was a black woman. Maybe this doesn't have anything to do with that. But I do think it's fascinating to look at his life. He never gets back on top. And he winds up dying, I think it's in the early 70s is when he passes away. So, and then he and his mother are buried in not necessarily unmarked graves, but they just have like the plaque that you get from the cemetery. There's no headstone on them. So
Right, yeah. And so I guess that comes to the next logical question of, do you think that this is because he was black?
yeah, I mean, I think the exile is for sure. I think that Sweely having a problem with the NAACP lawyer coming up, I think that there is some racism there. I think he doesn't want the NAACP involved, and he thought that this might maybe turn the tide in some way, some small way, but still, nonetheless. I think that the exile is these people are not happy. The jury is not happy, and Everett Sweely is not happy with him, and not happy with the partner. But the exile is kind of like that's a separate issue, right? Like he is exiled from Twin. Being pardoned is one thing, but exiled from Twin. Who else is exiled from Twin? And I mean, maybe this is a case of we've just gone so far that we're tired of this family, which could be it. It definitely could be. But you look back at the last story that we talked about, and Diamond Field Jack, he's not exiled from Twin Falls County, right? I mean, it would have been casual at the time, but you're not exiling people who do bad things. But somehow LeRoy Wilkins is exiled from Twin.
And in a much more, tolerant is the wrong word, but we're starting to come into the time period where we're going to start having these discussions about civil rights. We're talking 1940s. We're starting to have these discussions. I mean, we had been having these discussions since pre-World War One, but it is interesting that this comes up, kind of in the midst of this underlying American foundation of how do we take on this core thing where our systems are racist. And you don't really get a good answer because they end up banishing him. So it's interesting to me that this all started because of not one but two different house fires. Were they like uniquely prone to catching on fire back then?
I don't necessarily think that I mean, no. I think that it says in the newspaper article about Cornelia White's house that her house burns under suspicious circumstances. And so hers is kind of interesting. I don't see any primary sources that talk about how the different our first home gets, catches on fire. It seems like that might have been an accident.
Oh, interesting. I mean, it is fascinating that it's two different homes catching on fire, and then it spirals into a man being banished.
Yes.
Which is really, really interesting. And so, I guess, for you, do you think he did it?
Do I think that he started the fire or that he raped this woman?
Yeah, do you think he did the things that he was accused of?
I do not. I don't. And I think that I wish that I had the smoking gun, right? I wish I had the note that she wrote, but that note cannot be found. We have no idea where it is. It is in my mind. The idea of that alibi note comes into play because there have been already some issues, and it looks like that to me, LeRoy Wilkins was really trying to stay out of trouble with Marjorie.
Yeah, it seems like he was really working hard to mind his own business. by being like, I need you to write this anti-kidnapping note that I am not
Yeah.
napping you. You're coming here of your own free will. The dome light is an interesting piece. It kind of feels like they're saying that this woman is too stupid to write in the dark.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting take from our justice system. And I guess where does this story go from here now? What can we do to make sure that the story of LeRoy Wilkins and what lessons should we learn from this?
Yeah, I love the exile piece because we don't see it very often, like you were talking about a minute ago. Um, but I also feel like that this is definitely a story that should be told. As like, it can be amusing for sure, but it also can be a black story. It could just be a story of injustice. It does seem like where Governor Chase Clark goes through goes through the case in the pardon paperwork, or not the pardon paperwork, but in the pardon board. They cite that LeRoy Wilkins was wrongly convicted because there was no evidence. There's zero evidence, which is interesting. So if we're talking about injustice, like, yeah, this guy is imprisoned on zero evidence. That seems kind of wild. And so I think that we could really take away that this is a story that continues today. And I know that I go back to that well probably a lot, but we are seeing this exact same thing happen. Whether it doesn't matter what race of you are, we're seeing injustice in this way where people are put away for years, and then we find that the evidence is actually not there. There is no evidence, and so.
Yeah, what was the recent example? The Central Park 5, right?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
That's probably the biggest example that most people would have known of. I guess this is a fascinating story because you really get to see that when the system kicks a guy down, it's really hard to get back up.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think that is. It seemed like he was having a rough life before this, and they are one of the few families in Idaho, black families in Idaho at the time. And so we have evidence of Cornelia White showing up in the 1920s. And so she's been here for a while. Her son shows up sometime between 1920 and 1930 because he's on the 1930 census. And then they are one of a few black families and one of two in Rogerson. I mean, Henry Harris is the other one that's living out there at the time. And you don't have a lot of African Americans that are living there. But I think that plays to this broader story of like, yeah, it's tough to get out of. It's tough as just regular people to get out of any problems that you may have even done to yourself, whatever that looks like. But then you add a racial component to it, you add poverty to it, you add all of these pieces, and it seems like it's stacked against you. It just seems rough.
It is a rough, but I mean, ultimately really compelling story because there are all these elements of like, what the hell happened here, and then the kind of cherry on top is the Joe Louis beat where he's like, I have to divorce my wife. Every time I burn dinner, she says I'm not Joe Louis. It's horrible.
I know, and it makes it silly. I know that, but I also just think this guy can't get a break. He just can't get a break, and you see that in it. I don't know if you can add things to your show notes or whatever, but I'll send you the partner paperwork and the picture of LeRoy Wilkins. He seems like a beat down man.
Yeah, he sounds like a beat down man. And I can relate to that. From one beatdown man to another beatdown man, I see you, LeRoy.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that because in case you didn't know, we've exiled you from Twin Falls County. So I'll get you the paperwork.
Oh man, I got exiled. Oh man, in this year 2025.
Just continues. The injustice is real.
That would be a real news story of like local man banished in 2025 AD.
Yeah.
When we thought banishment was silly and goofy. Justin, thank you so much for taking the time today. Do you have anything you would like to plug? Where can people find some more resources, or what are you reading right now? Anything you'd like to plug?
Oh man, I'll say I'm reading the Chris Matthews Bobby Kennedy book right now. I'm loving that. I think that's great. Any resources that we have, look, try to, if you can support the Idaho Humanities Council, I'm a board member there, and we are looking for any support. They've got a lot of resources, but the biggest thing that they're doing is helping small communities with their humanities content. And I realize that a lot of people are not necessarily happy with diversity, equity, and inclusion, but that's not what the humanities is about. It really is about telling these stories. And so this story was something that I found, and then I have presented this story in multiple ways through the Idaho Humanities Council. And so if you are looking for an organization to support, I would definitely point you to the Idaho Humanities Council website and try to find a way that you can also be involved.
That was the story of LeRoy Wilkins, a man whose name may be lost to most history books, but whose experience says a lot about the county he lived in. A man convicted with no evidence, pardoned but not welcomed back. A man whose life unraveled not just from injustice, but from the sheer weight of being caught in a system stacked against him. I want to personally thank Justin Vipperman for sharing this story and for reminding us that history isn't always clean, but it is always worth revisiting. I'm Justin Mattson, and this has been A Story Your City Forgot.